Hello, good morning, everybody. Ada dutam de kiching mapung da wachi maloya ris. Tini chira so tambo ni tenin sa tambo ni ngor anjor ni desa tini na so nongwa go so wins.
Good morning, everyone. And so we will begin by reading the history, the brief history of the Red Chenrezig practice. And so we'll read the history first, and then we will begin our opening prayers. And so I will start with the history. The exalted ones are able to tally the merits of saving the lives of all the world's sentient ones. Yet how could the good qualities of even a single recitation of the 7 syllables be counted? The good qualities of having placed all the 3 sphere sentient ones without exception at the level of Buddhas can be tallied, yet the benefits of having uttered the 7 syllables but once defy description. The accumulation of merit from making offerings to the victorious ones filling space can be tallied, yet the attributes of having uttered the 7 syllables even once are uncountable. These are the words of Amitabha. Thus it is said, in the Tantra of the Lotus King, Mahakarunika, it is said, every Buddha of the 3 times is realized by cultivating a single body mandala. Thus, the form of guardian Avalokita is the one in whom every Buddha has gathered. By visualizing and remembering him, obscurations from even the acts without interval are made pure. This hard essence of the numerous teachings of the sutras and tantras taught by our kind teacher, the Buddha, was bestowed upon disciples by Guru Rinpoche in a manner for convenient practice. It is a Dharma teaching revealed by the Nirmanakaya Ratna Lingpa and imparted to karmically destined disciples with merit, in particular by the compassionate aspirations of Gar Tenzin Punsog, the true, noble, supreme Chenrezig, and Chakmi Raga Asya, the true Buddha Amitabha. The blessings of continuously practicing this great accomplishment, Drupchen, of the 100,000-fold accumulation of Mahakarunika Guya Samaja, the embodiment secret of the great compassionate one. The only temporarily disrupted as a result of the Cultural Revolution. Since the treasury of ocean of Tantra classes of the Great Secret has not diminished throughout the succession of 8 Garchen Rinpoches. It was only temporarily disrupted as a result of the Cultural Revolution. Since 1981, His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche Tenpe Nyima has been spreading the sun of the teachings of the Mani Drupchen and Drupchu to all corners of Tibet and across the world. Furthermore, anyone connected to this Mani practice will be relieved of all temporary disturbances and will ultimately be reborn in the pure land of great bliss. This is accomplished through the unfailing words of truth. Traditionally, the practice begins every year around the 10th day of the Tibetan month at the Chenrezig Temple in the Upper Gar Monastery and continues through the 15th day and concludes on the 18th day. During the same 5-day period as Gar Monastery, the Seattle Center will engage in the daily practice of Mahakarunika Guya Samaja within the bounds of a single mandala and under the light of a single butter lamp flame.
Opening prayer book. Manam gada nyambe sanjen damje dewa dambe donga danda nyende naname yang dagba zobe sanje ramboje toba
All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment.
Ma ye ba de le nga ye zang ge wa lai ko tu de re ne zong de nye ma sang da zam ye ba tu nga ye zang ge wa lai ko.
For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue.
Sanjo Nyembo Jeje Ba Sanje Nala Jasunje Chuda Sanjo Samba Ye Solan Dege Jasunje Chuda Ngenje Dege Je Sanjo Tongne Jeba Da Sanjo Samba La Ba La Deda Renje Neba Divyen Don Hendon De Sanjo San Jeje Gen Evgen Dana La Ba La Ramba Hinda Saba Je.
I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path.
Sanje Jedan Soje Jonan La Sanjo Barda Dana Jazanje Dage Jen Soje Be Sonanje Dola Ben Sara Sanje Drabayo.
Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings.
Manam Gada Nyambe Sanjedan Devadan Deve Jadan Dembar Jurje Donghada Donghar Jadan Davar Jurje Donghar Mebe Devadam Davar Jurje Yere Jadan Jadan Anyala Nevar Jurje.
May all mothers, sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Okay, page number 9. Namo Nase Nanda Ge Lama La Nase Ge Gen Sa Joba Bo Kamsa Yonda Da Sowan De Powa Tongda Da Senje Lo Je Yip Gen Nava Soge Jen Nasa Jene Jarve Do Kimbe Yike Nadande Seve Danye Garden Dowa Junze Ramboje Dasenyi Jengangne Sorwande Kinyi Jengangde Senje Lo Sendine Jine Namdande Londe Chuka Dokpa Senje Lo.
Namo to the Guru, the utter purity of all appearance and existence. I offer all appearance and existence arisen as the primordial ground. I supplicate you, may the three realms be completely liberated. Please grant blessings to empty samsara from its depths. Lord, with 5 omniscient wisdoms, crown ornament, kind one with a loving nature, precious protector of beings, heart of all Buddhas, inexpressible by words or thought, I supplicate you from the core of my mind. Bless me from within the state of Dharmata. Bless me to realize this mind, primordially pure and unborn, as the unfathomable Dharmakaya.
Okay, now Chenrezig sadhana, page number 3. Namo Guru Treme Kada Dagba Jeje Yen Nabzo Deva Jenje Kenkansa Chuka Pamela Sovande Donye Dava Dogvara Senje Lo Tukje Pinso and Tekba Jarve Ken Karaso Boda Laye Nemjoda Jarse Tukje Jina Sovanda Sandai Jinje Jongvara Senje Lo Mola Nabara Daba Trebeke Pare Bema Wije Kinkanso Urjin Rambo Chela Sovanda Nye Dara Sembara Senje Lo Kanye Namba Dabe Karjane Kandro Bamsan Debe Podanda Majin Sojara Yabla Sovanda Kedo Jinje Mebara Senje Lo Kandro Bamsan Debe Neje Jo Junka Deje Lenga Venesa Lingbe Yabla Sovanda Yando Dara Sembara Senje Lo Tuje Chimbo Chinje Labene Ola Lemdo Dembe Podana Tuka Jibzon Guru Lode La Sovanda So Senje Labda So Tuje Gandara Debe Kenkane Tony Ninja Dodo Podanda Kinchi Tsajo Lama La Sovanda Kenye Dara Sembara Senje Lo Lodra Namke Jinje Denesa Teje Don Sawadu Kala Sawadu Rubandara Sembara Senjela Madre Dendara Debe Nenjona Wanje Yongzo Luje Jankoranda Sandi Shichu La So Wanda Kasan Lenjan Dabar Senjela Dedon Jama Dave Povdan Hele Nanjan Debe Yangorda Kando Namla Sowanda Nawa Wanda Dawar Tosir Dimbe Kajunan Hele Dome Debe Boranda Aswandam Sowanda Sana Barje Yavara Senjelo Mola Lemdoi Dabar Jarvegen Given your hero, Jinze, Namla, Sorwanda, Yarza, Zimbara, Sinjela, Toje, Jamne, Sejen, Jenanje, Doso, Sorawan, Deba, Bananda, Toje, Denza, Tendera, Temne, Jan, Senlot, Jergin, Bebaran, Zedosor, Nima ngade dimbe marchande simji nyumung leje narwala seje jeje doje barje la darso darbe neza dende so lodan wimbe retro do joje ninjon da da mandarikin yunde nyando darwa yango yin Gong ne gong de pawa xin jie lo, da so ni mo nin jie yan nan la, san guan jie jie tu jie zhe jie, le dan ni mo ma re jie san ne jia, jie jie na wa jie ba ra sen jie lo, de so ga jie zhen jie na, jian jie da jie san jie zhe ba la. Chepan Jaban Tara Sembadan Cheje Sanje Doba Sanje Lo.
Back to page 3. Namo Guru. I supplicate Dharmakaya Amitabha in the absolute space of phenomena, unelaborated and pure like space, the western pure land of Sukhavati. Bless me to realize the view of emptiness. I supplicate the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara in the realm of victorious Buddhas where cloud banks of compassion gather, the eastern supreme abode of Patala. Bless me to develop loving kindness and compassion. I supplicate Garchen Rinpoche in the realm that is emanated from completely pure aspirations, the pure land, glorious mountain lotus light. Bless me to completely fulfill the twofold aim. I supplicate the Soul Mother, Sogyal, at her feet, in the palace where 100,000 Dakinis from the naturally pure land, Kichara, come and gather. Bless me with the uninterrupted stream of bliss and emptiness. I supplicate Ratnalingpa at his feet, in the supreme place where 100,000 Dakinis gather, the remote land of Dharma wheels of great bliss. Bless me to perfect experiences and realizations. I supplicate Guru Ludra, who is cared for by Nirmanakayas, in the place that is blessed by Avalokiteshvara, the palace arisen from residual karma of aspiration prayers. Grant me your blessings. I supplicate the kind root and lineage gurus, in the palace that liberates beings through emptiness and compassion, within the pure land emanated out of compassion to tame beings. Bless me to completely fulfill the twofold aim. I supplicate the sacred Dharma of the Guya Samaja, a profound path that accomplishes the Vajrabody in one lifetime, from the treasure place staircase to the sky in Lodrak. Bless me to perfect the accomplishments. I supplicate the groups of peaceful and wrathful deities of Guya Samaja, in the body mandala complete with the 4 empowerments, the supreme place where accomplishments gather like clouds. Bless me to accomplish the 3 kayas spontaneously. I supplicate the assembly of Mother Dakinis in the mandala that accomplishes the 4 activities within the illusion-like palace of bliss and emptiness. Bless me to master appearances. I supplicate the oath-bound protectors of the teachings in the palace of unhindered activities, where the teachings of fierce, powerful activities abide, pacify the outer and inner obstacles. Vajra siblings and Dharma practitioners, I supplicate you, supreme beings whose practices benefit both oneself and others, in the Buddha realm of pure aspiration and fortunate karma. Bless me to seize the strong hold of accomplishments. All you compassionate and greatly loving sources of refuge, I and other disciples supplicate you. Please gather cloud banks of compassion right now and cause blessings to fall on us like rain. At this time, when the 5 degenerations are rampant, the lowest point of the teachings, for sentient beings tormented by afflictions and karma, with great love, please develop abundant compassion and lead myself and others to the state of liberation. Having stayed in isolated hermitage after giving up concerns for this life, bless me to never lose disenchantment and renunciation, and so that my qualities, experience, and realizations will increase further and further, like the waxing moon. For myself and others, afflicted ones, objects of compassion, you loving guardians with light rays of compassion, please clear away our karma, mental afflictions, and ignorance, and grant your blessings to increase the light of our wisdom. We supplicate you, kind masters of the Kagyu lineage, bless us to gain perfection of lifespan and accomplishments, so that we followers can accomplish awakening and attain Buddhahood in one lifetime.
Not too bad.
Okay. Visualize that on your crown is a lotus, a sun disk, and a moon disk, upon which are the assembly of deities of the 3 roots and all the jewels, the sources of refuge. All beings with your parents as the foremost, recite the following with respectful body, speech, and mind.
Namo lama kongjo yedan la yarwa janze zoje la dada ndowa senje na gozan kebe jasen.
Namo. In the gurus, jewels, yidam deities, and the assembly of an ocean of victorious Buddhas, I and all sentient beings respectfully take refuge with body, speech, and mind. Namo. In the gurus, jewels, yidam deities, and the assembly of ocean of victorious Buddhas, I and all sentient beings respectfully take refuge with body, speech, and mind.
Rare la sanzar lo mangaran san jubambu mibye dowa dolo ya dezanyanye jayera korwa done dobarga dada sandare jimbargo kunjarare dobargo Gazayonzo tobargo.
I pay homage to the deity, which is self-awareness. I make offerings of unceasing clarity. I openly confess transgressions of the 4 extremes. I rejoice equally in the virtues of the 3 times. I beseech the Buddhas to empty samsara from its depths and to remain in the naked and unobscured primordial purity. I dedicate all merit to the realization of self-awareness. May I perfectly attain the 3 kayas.
One more time.
I pay homage to the deity, which is self-awareness. I make offerings of unceasing clarity. I openly confess transgressions of the 4 extremes. I rejoice equally in the virtues of the 3 times. I beseech the Buddhas to empty samsara from its depths and to remain in the naked and unobscured primordial purity. I dedicate all merit to the realization of self-awareness. May I perfectly attain the three kayas. Oh, in order to liberate all beings, to empty samsara from its depths into Avalokiteshvara's mandala, I generate bodhicitta from within the four immeasurables. Oh, in order to liberate all beings, to empty samsara from its depths into Avalokiteshvara's mandala, I generate from within the four immeasurables.
Okay, now mental offline. The yellow book. Only read English or English.
Page number 7 in the yellow prayer book, mandala offering. English only. An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms. If I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine. By offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping. Completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and attributes of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial, the supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood. Page number 10. Please turn the rules and the teachings common to both, according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
Please, everyone, open your video so Rinpoche can see you. And 中文的法友，请你们打开摄像头，你们自己的摄像头，这样Rinpoche可以看到大家。谢谢。
我这些年来，你大家看了有把它灭了的呢。在这俺个样子呢，俺那个突击进步，这里可能这是属于这里说到，这里我做两年参期呢，从下送来了的呢，家中做下的3几万年做的，这个家中做下的讲的呢，3几万的讲的送的那的呢，家中做下的送的。잡들이 동해 잡공도 없이 대저부터 소개하고 사제가 잡도 사제가 하고 요래지 드리고 말고 예를 상제들 상되는 사제가 나지 니지 상네 우리 샘도 남카다 그래 나지니 요 말에지 이 샘도 배 제보 차요래 예를 들이 상제들이 오 대샘님이 하고 som지 드리 대샘님 요 말 동해 요래 동네 탐시 동네 매번 대화는 뭐 sempo는 남가다고 하고는 들이 사지 동네에게 덮쳤다고 주지 나그니 서대장 고발 문제 왜서더니 이거 고토상 말해서 그거 조금 매니더니 사상 맞잡진 게 그래서 좀 홀로 또 공부 벌들이 다다 다 대송로지 들이 사제에서 들이 동답을 대마 송로에 동답을 하고 샘지바 하고 그래지 샘지는 다지 니몰라 인fin으로 깨공도 인fin으로다 총총도 니 줄을 요래지 옛날에 체보지 체비 방고 그래지 체비 맞는지 별로 두 첨보나 여기 처럼 담기셔도 그래 두 총총 같더니 라고 리드 송조지 않으면 이거 말이야 샘의 용이 조대에서 요래 삼제대에서 요래지 第三点这个上的平个马的上的七宝高的上，你前面有三几把的，你真能把长几把落他们满一把的。
So Shidele to everyone joining us on the live stream. So today I'm going to speak a little bit about the practice of the great compassionate one, according to the tantric tradition. And so generally speaking, all practices should unite the sutras and the tantras. And in all practices, taking refuge and cultivating bodhicitta are most important. So the refuge actually is related to cultivating bodhicitta, because where really does our motivation or this mind generation of bodhicitta come from? It comes from having taken refuge. So when we take refuge, we seek to be protected from suffering. And who is the one who knows the method of refuge, the method to be protected? That is the Buddha, a perfectly complete Buddha. A Buddha is someone who has cleared away all dualistic grasping itself and other, and who has realized that the mind is like space. And within the space-like nature of the mind, there is no duality of self and other. So the Buddha had realized the vastness of the mind. He realized that there is no duality, and that as long as there is dualistic thinking, there will be suffering. So the state of Buddhahood is a state of great bliss that is devoid of all suffering. It is a mind that abides like space. And so the Buddha himself, when he had attained complete enlightenment, he secluded himself from ordinary life and did not teach the Dharma initially, because he felt that it is so profound that others simply would not be able to comprehend the meaning of it. So he decided not to teach them the Dharma initially. And then Brahma and Indra came to make offerings to the Buddha of a golden vessel and the right turning conch, with the request to teach the Dharma. And so then he first taught the Dharma to these gods, and he taught them the ultimate truth. And they realized its meaning. And so that is, and the meaning of that is that ultimately it comes down to the mind generation of bodhicitta. That is what they really have understood. That the antidote to self-grasping is the altruistic mind. So the Buddha taught that this is what you have to develop. And it is something that all beings possess to some extent. We all possess love in our minds. But the Buddha taught that this love must become great, immeasurable love. This love is like the heat, the warmth that melts the ice blocks. And if that heat is very strong, then many ice blocks can be melted. But if the heat is very weak, then it can't even provide warmth for our own physical body. So we all possess some heat, we all possess some love, but the Buddha said that this limited love is not so beneficial. You need to cultivate great love. So that is a special quality of the Buddhist teachings. It is the mind generation of the four immeasurables.
들이 차지의 주봉 제세지도 선거 동도 가리래 되는 오 등의 맛이 등의 시기고 등의 맛이네 차지 등의 시바사데 등의 자와가다 단지 마하고는 오다 심지 말이 인도도 양다도 고상정도 송데 샘진지 삼바지 총총물이 되래 샘지 등의 하고 들어다 삼발하고 그래 빼는 미지는 다 잠벌는 게 밑에 주고 차고 쌍만 들이다 땅만 로만 톡탕시에 깨자시에 지도들 매도지게 잠벌는 게 등의 하고시 그러다 오 잠벌는 매일도 등의 요래 대마트를 보고 동의하고 말이지. 얘는 대하고는 하고한테 잠벌는데 야고 차고를 족밤을 와는 것도 설로서 끼어버리. 다 재미 막 삼바 재미 당보들이 하고는 대를 로아를 독들이다 감성들 독감속 매번 감기를 감좀 매나양 다지도 말하나 박차고도 등이 찍받지 정도 하고 들이 생사만 속으로 하고 다 재미 열세기도 이제 때마다는 로그 다져서도 노아를 또 참아 됐다 샘적을 해지 등이 민성성도 등이 야 돌이 매는 저래 등이 그래서 좀만 벗어 거지 담지 싸웠다 다 나디지 버터 타도 나지 나르지 차도 그랬더니 오 다사는 삼기 참아 자르고 탈라버렸어 나한테 미성 세비 삼지 사지 하고 그 재미 여러 세비 따사마 재미지 참아야고 차고도 없어는 그랬더니 다 능게지 뭐 때도 또 탑가고 딱 개와 두고 레주리 하고도 없어 레주리 하고 그것도 다 능게지 다 레주리 하고는 그랬더니 능게지는 때문에 다 이제 다지 단지 제로 다지 메나 다 심수가 차려도 저런 탐지 장도로 탐다고도 없어는 심지 방 어디 답을 주고 어디 돌 들이로도 남아 이제는 남자는 막 탐지 낸 것을 오 좋아 쪽으로 잘구나 다사 속세는 그렇게 없어 때들은 맞추고 세도 세지 또 세도 찍바래시 얘는 내고 som나 때들이자 랑트로는 들나 차롱도 쉬나 들이 잡도록 잡고도 잡도록 잡아들이 섭지도 동문이 다다다 섭지도 다 지방 매발이 요발도 마음에 땅내서 요 말해 내가 하고도 대비를 대비를 섭지도 없이 이들은 다뭐 삼바 재미되지 들이 게 재미지 들이 뭐 다도 섭지도 동해를 좋아요 봐 대시를 가 재미지 들이 땅놈 재미를 오 땅포대 예비 땅포대 예비 들이 생각 간다고 차로 채비바지 로지는 들이 다들 상제 공방 재미적인 감리 하고 대하고는 그 재미적 재미도 들이랑서 재미다 다니니 봐 또막 참 싸워 차오나 깜들이 다들이 오 깜들이 다다다다 다 상제 거서 그 용띠 랑서 하고 그래 뭐 말들이 로주도 뭐 까당시 하나답게 매제로 요 말이 장속sem이랑 저거들이 대답이 하고들이 주거를 롱거를 죽거지 당도 들사제 담도 로주도 고생하는도 없어 다 될려가 제고도 없어 들라도 상한사도 되는 거 저거래
So we continue today about the four immeasurables, and so which is on page 12. So it begins with, in order to liberate all beings, to empty samsara from its depths into Avalokiteshvara's mandala, and generate bodhicitta from within the four immeasurables. So first, we cultivate the four immeasurables. The first immeasurable is the immeasurable love. If immeasurable love does not arise, then this recitation of a verse like this becomes just lip service. We actually need to put that into practice. So ultimately, even though we recite these words, we have not really understood the actual method that frees us from suffering. So what does it mean to become liberated from suffering, and how do we become liberated from suffering? In order to become liberated from suffering, we have to become liberated from self-grasping. From the ultimate perspective, there's only one mind. All sentient beings in the 6 realms have the same mind. For example, in our world, humans and animals live together. And then yet there's such a great difference. Animals experience so much more suffering, and human beings experience much more happiness. And why is that? Our happiness and our suffering are the creations of our own mind. Because there is self-grasping in the mind, dualistic thinking arises, and that leads to the arising of the 84,000 different afflictive emotions. And this is why the Buddha taught 84,000 different Dharma teachings. It is because we don't know suffering. That is why in the very beginning the Buddha said, you have to recognize suffering. And what is at the root of all suffering? It is self-grasping. And that is why we need the mind generation of bodhicitta. So that is then the meaning of I generate bodhicitta from within the 4 immeasurables. So first we need to understand suffering, and then on the basis of knowing suffering, such a mind generation of bodhicitta or the 4 immeasurables can arise. Then we can actually say, I generate bodhicitta. For example, a person who wishes for everyone in this world to be happy, the reason, and then they speak about that, and they make an effort to fight for equal rights and human rights and so forth. Like, why can they do that? Why are they making such effort? It is because they first understand the difficulty, the suffering of people in this world. And on the basis of knowing their suffering, they make a focused effort to benefit those individuals. So for the most part, we are unaware of the suffering of beings in the 6 realms in samsara. So when you understand the suffering of beings, then you are able to really develop a wish that wants to separate others from suffering. For example, you think, may there be no wars in the world, may everyone be happy in the world. So this is when the first immeasurable of love arises. First, when love arises, you begin to become aware of others' suffering. The suffering of the sentient beings in the 6 realms, or the 3 realms, the form realm, formless realm, and the desire realm. Even if one is a sentient being without a body, a formless being, they still are not liberated from self-grasping. And therefore they still form habitual tendencies that leads to suffering. And the suffering is essentially always the same. So when you recognize that, you give rise to this mind generation where you think, I have to purify my own mind. So that is to empty samsara from its depths, the 6 realms from its depths. So you cultivate this mind generation of bodhicitta, wishing to liberate sentient beings from the suffering of the 3 lower realms, and also the higher realms. In the lower realms, beings experience suffering upon suffering. In the higher realms, we mainly experience the suffering of change. There's various kinds of suffering, but all suffering comes down to self-grasping. Because we grasp it as self, we develop dualistic thoughts. So if you understand that point, then the concept of liberating suffering becomes quite simple. All we need to liberate is self-grasping. And then all sentient beings are actually Buddhas once self-grasping is eliminated. So when you understand that, you know that all they need to cultivate is the 4 immeasurables. When they cultivate love and understand karma, then their self-grasping will diminish. And when their self-grasping diminishes, their pure minds are all the same. Then the ice blocks are all melting to be one with the ocean water. And so with this understanding is really the starting point of the Dharma practice. The path of Dharma practice begins normally with reflecting on the 4 thoughts that turn the mind, and then all the other following stages of the Dharma practice. In order to become liberated from all suffering of the 6 realms of samsara, it is enough if we only cultivate bodhicitta. So when you recognize that, you think all I need to do is cultivate love. And when sentient beings cultivate love, their minds is all the same. And when I liberate my own self-grasping, when my own ice block melts, then it merges to be one with the ocean-like Buddha mind, and it becomes all-pervasive. And then my mind pervades wherever the ocean pervades. And that is the ultimate truth. Ultimately, no real sentient being exists. Ultimately, there is no self. Sentient beings cling to a self that does not actually exist. It is just they don't realize that. So first, in any case, we need to cultivate immeasurable love, and from immeasurable love arises to immeasurable joy, knowing that even though sentient beings suffer, ultimately they all can become liberated from suffering. Knowing that leads to immeasurable joy. And then immeasurable equanimity is when you realize that samsara and nirvana are inseparable, and the mind is like space. So in this way, through the 4 immeasurables, we attain the state of Buddhahood. So I generate bodhicitta from within the 4 immeasurables. When your mind becomes completely pure, without any thought of self and other, you recognize your true nature. And what you recognize is that the 3 kayas are actually qualities that are inherent to your own true nature. And although things do not inherently exist, the Sambhogakayas and the Pure Lands still do not go out of existence. They still appear. They are a natural manifestation of bodhicitta. From the Dharmakaya arises the Sambhogakaya, and from the Sambhogakaya, the Nirmanakaya. And they manifest, although they lack any inherent existence. And there are various Buddhas and Pure Lands, and I need to connect my mind to them. So with this sort of state of mind, the actual practice of a deity, according to the secret mantra, really begins.
Dira Tomani Mimi Tongani, Mimi Hiva Country Mimi Hiva the Tene Yishiha Kogore, the Malare Besumatini, Tongon Namsi Mountain Yishi Tongs, Namsi the tongue with the number of Dani Nishin Shiba Dena, more Dena, Dani Mevaha Kosotana. Please, Mevaha Kona, settle down Yuri. Self-carry, you done not cut away your can't be me party. This is a king of Roti. They are machine love the children, don't teach anything. They easy. You see the mangari, yellow you by Yashis at it. Now cut the Tommy by your head. They are cotton, 7 narrow hard cotton. Oh, Tamche, she is awesome. The young women so wrong, you see to your person. Like sempre nero hako sona, then hold any nero hako to it. Thomas sempre do the hako race. You see, sempre nero hako song. There it is, that's a magazine. That's large about the double. Do that the mato was in Jiggy. Large, large already. Large sugar on the tablet. Sugar around in Namka Tower, longer Jaton Tower. Namkada Jatoni Kaka Maris on Reddit, Rami tapped the Yorich. They carry the charm with the same people as on took several hunger. This is a Tago Same died, same people dying in even 3 Taram Yigati, Mimi Tongan, 호랑 때 옹을 오거든. 강내 때를 샘 코랑 랑시라 랑지가 셀레니 맞아오더니 옹아 랑지가 요래 때 샘코랑에 꼼당문화 송만하지 샘코랑 랑시라들이 이시지 뭔가 요래 이시고 그러면 따라야지. 내가 말이야 요바된 자통을 따버려 뭐보다 심한 말이 봐. 내려들이 딱 보시면 감당되다 랑지가 배는 대화시 저거 봐도 랑지가 탑대 요래지. 흘리지 탑대 봐도 주요 말이지. 대가 뭐든 때를 사람들 딱 보시면 막고다 저 때라 요래 대 이제를 start는 다들 나를 하고 거 상문에 라게 샘디 이제 샘들 차롱다가 샘디 이제 최인데 맞다 단 차롱 그래야 샘디 이제 이제 봐야 차롱도 천지 저 봐야 대신라 사이대 이하고 송지 대 라고지 봐대 라 조디 네 시라문에 대비 젊으시 송네 다주 공부하자고는 이제 뒤상으로 송래 샘그랑 실 예리 사지 내리를 샘지 담지 예리 사제지라니 말면서 독진시에 대시에 차롱 그랑지 예리 철에 대하고서 다가서 차롱을 다 예라고 한 것도 차롱 교수들이 차롱도 나지지 교수들은 제비 예들이 교수들이 다 잡지 못이 참아더니 나까지 다 잡아라서 이제 최랑 진담지 뭐지고 하고는 대래들이 다 라이거지 여러분 다 답고신 간테라도 못함지 라지 이제 사공자들이 샘들이 라게 샘들 차로를 해 쇼스를 라테 가까바래지 사다랑 시제미래 예래다다 예미 동적 경험을 퍼박가로 시그래 대실 오메 세라 답고신 간테 내다 일 세히요 영나들이 상내는 말그 생은 차로도 쇼고요 랑사이 띵기시우 거래 띵기시우는 들이 다더라 다때들이 답벌하들 니메가 나지 니메가 대 세면중에 들다 락은 자총다워 들대고 나와 셈지랑 무슨 대답도 동담대 말 안에서 좀 대답이 가사니 대사 고들이나 고아랑상 차용 거래 직접 마오리를 들대고 갖고 요래 대사 다다다
Coming to the visualization of the generation stage, yes. So it says, from the empty, non-referential state in the center of a palace in an expanse of 5-colored light. So the non-referential, from the empty non-referential state should be understood to be the primordial wisdom. Milarepa had said, I do not see consciousness, I only see primordial wisdom. So the consciousness refers to the dualistic mind that possesses dualistic thoughts of self and other. But when you look at the very essence of this consciousness, you recognize that there actually are no self and other. The mind abides like space. So that is the empty, non-referential state. So when we are introduced to Mahamudra, it says, without a single thought, decisively look at your ultimate nature. So this ultimate nature, this seeing of your ultimate nature, is primordial awareness or wisdom. And this term, primordial wisdom, we call this consciousness primordial wisdom because it has been there since beginningless time, since primordial times. Since primordial times, space exists. And wisdom because it knows all things as they are. It knows its own true nature. In a Heart Sutra, it says, it is the perfection of wisdom is the sphere of self-knowing primordial wisdom. When you realize your true nature, the nature of your mind, you will naturally realize the nature of all phenomena of samsara and nirvana. Because all phenomena of samsara and nirvana are a creation of the mind. And so this is also what we must understand when we engage in the practice of a deity according to the Vajrayana. So ordinary sentient beings have not realized that. So, but when we practice a deity, where is that deity? The deity is all pervasive. The Dharmakaya mind of the deity is all pervasive like space. And then the deity Sambhogakaya appears like a rainbow in the sky. But the sky and the rainbow are not separate. They are a union. The rainbow naturally pervades the sky. And the Sambhogakaya is a natural manifestation of this ninth generation of bodhicitta. The Sambhogakaya, the deity, the Pure Lands all arise out of bodhicitta. So when dualistic grasping is cleared away, then the mind abides in this empty, non-referential state. So from within that state, in the center, appears a palace. In the center of a palace, in an expanse of 5-colored light, on a seat of lotus and sun and moon discs, is one's own awareness. So your own awareness, or the palace within the expanse of the 5-colored light, is also a projection of your own awareness. It manifests just like rainbow lights emerge from a crystal when being touched by the sun rays. In the Samantabhadra prayer, it also mentions that from a single nature arise the 5 wisdoms. So the 5-colored light are all the natural expression of mind itself. So it is not that there is nothing there, things appear, but they lack any concrete existence. But still, there is the manifestation of the various Pure Lands, such as the Garchen or the Eastern Pure Land of Manifest Joy, and so on. And they appear, but no one actually created them. So they spontaneously exist as a natural reflection of bodhicitta. And so the deities and the Pure Lands exist in this way. So this is what we need to realize when we practice a deity, when we think that I'm practicing this deity. You need to understand that on the basis, on the ground, my mind really is the deity. It is just like recognizing that ice is actually water. So you recognize that currently my mind is in an ice-like state, but its nature is still water, and when it melts, it becomes water. So this is to understand the actual nature of the deity. And Lord Jigten Sumgön said in the Gongjik that if something would not exist on the basis, fundamentally exist, it could not come into existence just by you viewing it. In other words, just by meditating on something or visualizing something, you could not create something that doesn't already inherently exist as such fundamentally. So our true nature already is the deity, and that is why when we practice the deity, we can become the deity. Or in Dzogchen, it says, all sentient beings are primordially Buddhas, or ice is primordially water. So we should practice the deity with this understanding. So you know that my mind is like ice, but ice really is water. And when I melt my ice block of self-grasping by cultivating the 4 immeasurables, then my mind will merge with the ocean-like water of all the Buddhas, the mind of all the Buddhas, and I acquire all their qualities. So it is important to recognize that all water in the world has the same nature. Whether it is in a state of ice or a cloud or rain falling down, it all is water, essentially. So when you meditate on a deity, you visualize the deity's form and color and implements and so on, the Pure Land of the deity, and all of these appearances, the visualization of the deity, actually primordially, fundamentally already exists in the ultimate state. It is just we don't recognize that for as long as our mind is in an ice-like state. But when the ice melts, it will become one with the ocean water. In the Vajrakilaya practice, therefore, it says, from the beginning, you and I have been one. So primordially, you are one with the deity, with the Pure Land. You only need to melt the ice block of self-grasping and gain certainty in this, and cultivate the four immeasurables. The pure form of the deity emerges from a mind that is free of dualistic grasping at self and other. It appears like a rainbow in the sky. And this also relates actually to one of the verses in the 37 practices where it says, all appearances are one's own mind. So in this way, you hear different instructions. You read the 37 practices, you hear different teachings, and because you have heard different instructions, you can instantly understand. You already have gained some understanding beforehand, so when you hear this now, you will be able to understand. Of course, if you have never heard anything like that before, it will be difficult to understand that right away. But nowadays, most people have some understanding of that, and that is also mainly due to the kindness, the compassion of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So through his compassion, his kindness, now many people in this world have some understanding of the holy Dharma. And so in any case, it is also said that I am primordially the deity primordially is myself. So this is what you need to gain certainty in.
주습도 상제 탐실란 조바판을 드리다다 주습도 상제 탐제 투가 뜻방이 드리지 심지 탐실을 사바던 지제 심지 탐실 망복을 드리다다 동네 다 당지 시작하고 요래 심지 장미가 시작하고 요래 내 타바치면 도는 송요래 탄적삼티 tun적으로 세대 내록도 내용을 드리 감성 심지 탐실을 레리를 소리를 선배 비용 요소 습지 탐지를 마참해봐 때도 레저 상도고 때는 판주자와님 주고 천주를 좀 달아 선상 이 상제 탐지에 대시지가 요래 습지 탐지에 저바 대시 상요래 좀 습지 탐지 이제 연매 상제도 이제 연매들이 랑지가 페이퍼 몇 번에 시가 또 거더니 다당어서 취지 이제 또 없어서 뭐 요래 다그 사람도 또 없더니 다 샘지바 체비바데 대비지부터 때 강리를 대비지부터 없었어 대비지부터 공부도 됐어 그래서 취 다가서부터 대비지 취지 이제 또 없어 이제 샘지 매와 샘지 가가 매와 또 없었는데 우리들이 샘지 담을 때도 폐교에 내려지는들이 다 내려지는들이 다른 거 단님이 받으려 다다 내가 분들이 좀 많다는데 다 조트버서 그 전바시 봐 내가 그 샘지 대사라고 고요래 다 딱먹고 드리다다 공사원도 먹고 타가다 잘라서 조트버서 거요래 내가 이제 드세서다 제는 게 그때 양 얘는 그지 잘못 담절을 레지도 세주 니까지 오 랑게 단지 메빠까미 이시가 되 랑지 세거지 잘못 라가래를 저저 나는 소도 적봐도 용말이 자라담지 시롱도 적지 동담에 대방을 때 양다양도 선거요래 사진을 찾으러 톡집과에 매들이 나와 사진에 제주라 파 잡는 고대기가 잡다봐 감성을 잡다봐 철들은 습득을 넣다봐 대 동담에 또 돈이게 대마 동담에 대마도 대하고서는 그러다 이제 저다만 제바 제 집에 집아 담지 때리세요래 대다가 잘 들이 남상 다들 저래지 파 지로 야송다고 잘 그래 Tirita Saman to book on the Cherim that the three Ranjing to talk the Taka Jay, so semi, but they tell it, Ranjing dropping already.
So then it says, on a seed of lotus and sun and moon discs is one's own awareness as a red Shri syllable. So this red Shri syllable, which is one's own awareness, one's own awareness that is empty, like empty space, clearly appears in an instant as a red Shri syllable. So the Shri represents one's own clear awareness. When you meditate on the seed syllable of a deity, such as the syllable Shri, then there is no other thought of self and other in your mind. And when there is no thought of self and other, that is non-dual primordial awareness. So think that in an instant, the mind transforms into the Shri syllable. And within that state, within the Shri, all the Buddhas of the three times are one. So this is how you simultaneously make offerings to all the Buddhas of the three times. Their minds are one and the same. They all possess great love and compassion for all sentient beings. They recognize that at the root of the myriad sufferings of sentient beings lies self-grasping. And knowing that, they are able to melt the ice block of self-grasping in sentient beings through the power of their mind. In the Great Liberation Sutra, it says, it is a greater benefit to spend one session in a state of meditation than it is to liberate the lives of all sentient beings in the three realms of samsara. And so that is because when one remains within a state of meditation, the mind pervades all these sentient beings, and it purifies or lightens their karmic obscurations. And such benefit to sentient beings, that is really what actually pleases the Buddhas. If we want to please or offer to the Buddhas, that is what pleases the Buddhas, and that is what purifies the obscurations of sentient beings. So the reason why sentient beings can be benefited through one's meditative state is because fundamentally the basis of our mind is one and the same. It is through the power of non-conceptual primordial awareness, or it is also called the power of the Dharma Dhatu. Now there are those three powers. First, there is the power of one's own motivation, one's own bodhicitta, one's own four immeasurables. But where do one's own four immeasurables come from? They really come from the great compassion of all the Buddhas. And that's the second power, the great compassion of all the Tathagatas, of all the Buddhas. And then the third power is the power of the Dharma Dhatu. And that is the state where Buddhas, the state of Dharma Dhatu is the place where Buddhas and sentient beings are one. So fundamentally, there is no real separation between Buddhas and sentient beings, between all beings. And we realize that when there is no self-grasping. We practice the deity and temporarily rely on the illusory form of a deity when we practice the deity. So the illusory form of the deity is also referred to as the created Nirmanakaya, a creation, for example, a statue or a tanka, a picture of the deity. That is called the created Nirmanakaya. They exist because for our practice, we do need some sort of a reference point. We need a place to focus our mind on for the time being, for as long as we are practicing. And there are many instructions on how we should visualize the deity's form with its implements and ornaments and so on. But the root essence of it all is that when you visualize and you focus your mind and there is no thought of a self, no self-grasping in the mind, you can actually become any deity. You can transform into any deity. Because ultimately, the mind of all the deities is one and the same. It is that on the ultimate level, within the expanse of primordial wisdom, all the Buddhas are one. We have mentioned this quote many times. So even though there might be 100,000 Buddhas, they have a single enlightened mind. And so that is really one special quality of the Buddha Dharma. So the quality is that if we want to expand, then there is the nature of endless samsara and nirvana, the three realms and so forth. But all of this can be condensed into the mind itself on the ultimate level. So relatively we have this immense universe of samsara and nirvana, but ultimately it all comes back to just the mind. And that is why we speak about two kinds of knowledge. The knowledge that knows things as they are, and the knowledge that knows everything that exists, all things in their extent. So when we practice the deity, visualize the deity on the basis of this understanding, then in an instant we will forget about our ordinary illusory body and become the rainbow-like deity, according to how it is described in our generation stage, or we can also use a tanka, an image of the deity, as a support. But most important is that the mind remains without distraction. If you're undistracted, then within this undistracted state, the deity will naturally become established.
The Dubjang the Javan Chuchi Baran, the same way, some Sancho, Missy, and the Sanjay Tanto sent the Japa Jagori, Senji Kunja Dubjang, the Rora do Senji of the less of Togori. There matter drum, matter maxima, walk young to the massam getting it by young Yori. So I opened the young, so I may put the young, so I may put the young Italy, dark drawing, home drawing, young drawing, there's the man of the little the home drawing, the lady on Kotukam, Matona, the roger, the radio, the butter, taro, the butter, Kali, Pena, was the Lord. 하장 쪽파더니 다디를 잡는 양도 다디 잡고 되들 저 럼게 딱 그거래 바로 이바데 소화 가려지네 다다 레좀 되게 취대 다스 개비진인 담도 취소는 되트 소화도 오 레좀 되는 문제리 서로 생각 소화도 다디 되서 드럽잖아더니 레좀 되는 이 시기다나 취소 미저 가다는 좀 벌다서 레좀 되는 이 시기와 다디 좀 다주고 처음 그러더니 데레티리 싸워도 나 네가 도로도마다 파격되는 나라니 사실이 하고서는 싸워도 되더니 그렇게 조상제 세번내로 돌았더니 대마 타도 simply 담지 서나 상제에 적고 요 상제에 봐도 랑게 세번내로 도마도 상제 서를 따지요 말에 대를 말씀 건다고 요래 대다당은 담을 가는 거니 벨다 나바사제베 출라 대바지 잡이도 마시리 로담지나 다르바타실 못 하고요래. 그때 자들 레저를 또 랑이 좀 되더라. 랑 산지에 임바나 스치 가까이 오면 되나. 못 속는 차로들 돌을 들어가야 하는 거래. 차로들 돌을 들어가야 하는 걸. 다 레저 되는 시제고 대체에서 대바 토마지 다 두장들이 오소래. 그리스도인이 사람들이 양이지고 다 양이지고 다 사족서 고도 사나. 이 초자들이 가게들이 로도다른 산화대들이 양이지도 그리고 저거요래. 접 정치바데. 무접 다르 탐지는 랑의 삼능제들 같이 찌라 뒤도고 들이다. 랑 처럼도 시원들이 저 이런 피토로 그래. 처럼도 같이 시원들이 남들이 피토를 첩에 철저 저거들이 랑이가 피바다들이 천둥으로 다르 탐지는 랑처럼 좋아들이 그룹대 sem 좋았잖아. 나중에 처럼도 삼능제 찌는 게 저러요래. 데레디
And so then it radiates lights that makes pleasing offerings to the victorious Buddhas and purify the negativities and obscurations of all sentient beings. So when you have gained certainty in bodhicitta, then your mind becomes one with all the Buddhas, and then the mind purifies the negativities and obscurations of all sentient beings. And sentient beings have different levels of obscuration. Some have thicker layers of obscurations, and some beings' obscurations are much lighter. There are different levels of liberating sentient beings for this reason. We say that, may I liberate those not liberated, may I release those not released, may I give breath to those without breath. So these three statements or prayers refer to three levels of liberating sentient beings. So basically we gradually liberate sentient beings depending on the level of their obscuration. There are basically two kinds of liberation or liberating of obscurations. There is the effortless and the effortful or effort-bound liberation of obscurations. So the effortless liberation of obscurations happens naturally, for example, through the liberation by seeing, a liberation by hearing, liberation by touching, for example, or liberation by tasting, like eating the mani pills, or liberation by seeing are these mantras that we print on clothing and so forth. So even if one has no awareness really of what that means, if one is an animal, for example, and one just comes across this liberation by seeing and sees it, one purifies obscurations. And this is how obscurations in the minds of beings are purified gradually, slowly. For example, it is like one's clothing are dirty, and if one's clothing are very dirty, you have to keep washing them with soap. And the more you wash your clothing, the more purified, more clean they will become. So sentient beings have to be purified of their obscurations gradually. And so that is the first point. And then secondly, sentient beings are here or are introduced to the nature of karma, the Dharma teachings given by the spiritual teachers. So that is the liberation of obscurations that requires effort. So we hear about these teachings, and then these teachings that we heard generate a feeling in us, and we feel that that is real. Karma is real. There actually is karma cause and effect. And when you realize that, already your obscurations have begun to become purified somewhat. They become lighter and lighter. Also it is said, unless you have realized or gained certainty in karma, cause and effect, all talk about emptiness is just lie or just kind of lip service. So really the purification of obscurations begins with understanding karma, cause and effect. And then the secret purification of obscurations is that temporarily my clothing or my mind, like clothing, is defiled, polluted. But ultimately, my mind is the deity. My mind is one with the mind of the Buddha. There is no difference. That is why it is said, in an instant, one becomes a perfectly complete Buddha. In an instant of realizing this. In an instant, sentient beings can become enlightened when they see their true nature. And the Buddha is to be found within oneself. You cannot find the Buddha outside of yourself. So there are different levels of liberating sentient beings. I mainly mentioned those three levels: liberating, releasing, and giving breath. In this world, there are many people who have great devotion to the Buddha Dharma. And even if one just has a wish to take the refuge vow, with that wish, actually, the purification of obscurations has already started. And one's karmic obscurations have already become so much lighter. So then from there, you continue to practice and you recognize that I actually am not separate from the Buddha. This is very, from this recognition, you begin to generate the heat that melts the ice block. So it begins with a certainty in karma, cause and effect. When that certainty arises, your purification of obscurations has started. And then as you continue your practice, the obscurations become lighter and lighter. And eventually you will see the significance of bodhicitta, and then you will make an effort in cultivating bodhicitta. For example, there are some people who have developed this certainty. Some people want to practice the 3-year retreat, for example. Some people really are interested in Dharma practice. And that is a sign that the purification of their obscurations has really started. And so then it says, a little bit down the line, so somewhere later it says, then the light rays gather back and we attain all the cities. And so these cities is that when love and compassion arises in your mind, your own self-grasping melts away. And when your own ice block is melting, then you are also able to benefit others. When you have become like water, you will naturally benefit sentient beings. So that is really the siddhi or the accomplishment. The siddhi is the warmth that can melt the ice block. It is therefore really love and compassion. So then I appear as Goyam, Samaja, and so forth. So then there's the visualization in the sadhana, and that is just according to the visualization. You visualize the way it is described. But when you visualize the different elements of the deity, recollect the pure meaning of each visualization. So in the secret mantra, when we practice a deity, we often encounter a deity in the Yab Yum aspect, so a deity with a consort. And what does that actually mean? So an ordinary samsaric couple, for example, experiences the bliss of sexual union. And what is that bliss actually? That bliss actually is the state of one's own mind. It is never separate from your own mind. So actually the bliss experience through union does not really rely on the other person. It's not gained from the other person, but it is inherent to one's own true nature. Whenever the mind becomes free of dualistic thinking and you come to the ground of your mind, that is when you experience great bliss. And there are essentially 3 occasions when we naturally come to the fundamental nature of the mind. That is during sexual intercourse, when we die and the consciousness transfers, and during deep sleep state. So also here in relation to great bliss, we are introduced to the nature of great bliss, for example, through the practices of the channels, winds, and drops. So when we come to the fundamental nature of the mind, we experience great bliss because our mind primordially is the Buddha by nature already, and we just come face to face with our true nature and recognize that bliss is our actual natural state, and the other person is only a condition whereby we are able to come to our natural state. But the bliss still is inherent within ourselves, within our own mind. Ordinary sentient beings don't recognize that. So ordinary samsaric couple, for example, are attached to one another, and they are distracted by the outer performance of bliss, and they believe that the bliss is derived from the other person, when actually it is in a quality inherent to one's own mind. And so to recognize that, we engage in practice. For example, we practice the channels and the winds, or we practice Mahamudra, and we gradually come to realize that our own true nature is greatly blissful. It is unchanging great bliss. It is the Buddha Vajradhara. So, as I mentioned, there are those 3 occasions when we naturally come to our fundamental nature. And one of them is through sexual union, or through the experience of great bliss. And so that is what the Yap-Yum union points at. It is not the ordinary samsaric attachment, but it is the true nature of bliss inherent to one's own mind. So when we see the representation of Yap and Yum in union, then it reminds us of that blissful state of even a samsaric union. But here we recognize that that bliss is actually inherent to our own true nature. It arises, or it is recognized, whenever the mind becomes free of thinking. And there is no thought in the mind, and you recognize the bliss on the ground, then the union becomes a practice of realizing the view, or the ultimate truth, or non-dual primordial awareness. And this bliss, therefore, is recognized only through practice. Ordinarily, when samsaric sentient beings are distracted outwardly, then bliss leads to attachment, and that leads to even greater suffering. But in the Samantabhadra prayer, it says, when you recognize it, you are a Buddha. Not recognizing it, you are a sentient being wandering in samsara. So that is the meaning of the Yap-Yum in union.
Yam-yam-dila sa-nang-sang-sang-yore, di-dong-chi-ja-jang-gi-chi-mo-yore, sa-sang-we-chu-tam-chi yab-re-ti, di-nang-we-chu-tam-chi du-je-ge-ram-chi dim-ak-ta-we-re-ti, dong-pa-ri-to-dong, na-dong-na-wa-yab-la-dong-pa-yon-chi. Nang-sen-we-ti-li, ta-lang-la-song-yang-mi-chi-bu-ka-le, de-wa-yab-la-dong-pa-yon-chi, chu-lu-sep-chi de-wa-chen-mo-yon-na, 대화 제보도 강게 대화를 뭐 좀나 오 내가 뭐 남도 니디 미바 차송을 니디 미마들이 대화 yap로 동바였는데 대동성적 대단히 샘집으로 되는들이 싸와 yap로 동바였는데 저도 샘마인과 되는들이 쉬어살고 용로 되게 게임이 똑과 강제되는 것들이 쳐다랍혀서 좋은 대화 제보들이 싸와 yap로 동바연성 동화들이 선왕상승을 했지.
And then there's also an outer, inner, and secret aspect to Yap and Yum, and it's extremely important to understand the meaning of it. So on the outer level, all outer phenomena, the outer appearing phenomena are the Yap, or the male. And then the nature of all these appearing phenomena is illusory. It is empty. And the empty nature of all appearing compounded phenomena, this empty nature is the Yum, or the female. So appearance is Yap and emptiness is Yum. And then when you engage in the practice of the inner mind, for example, the channels, winds, and drops, and so forth, in the context of the channels and winds practice, bliss is the Yap and emptiness is the Yum. When great bliss arises and you look at the nature of bliss, you will find no dualistic thought within your mind. And the nature of this bliss is the Yap, its empty nature is the Yum. And bliss and emptiness are a union. A bliss is empty. And then within that state of bliss and emptiness, we find clarity. And clarity is the Yap, and the empty nature again is the Yum, the female. And then when you sustain that state of clarity, of clear awareness, without distraction, continuously, then all arising thoughts, virtues or non-virtues, will become liberated just like waves on water. And when they become liberated, you experience great bliss. So again, clarity is the Yap, and emptiness is the Yum. So these are the outer, inner, and the secret aspect of Yap and Yum.
첫디는 싸wan 그 삽동이는 데가 요래 열대하지 뭐 요래 이 딱바라도 내고는 다 삽동은 내고나 이 신대적 내고 그래 대회들이 다 똑같다 마포도 마포로 거기 신대적만 내고 그래 그래서 서랑 거기 배리 라포도 해고 동자한테 세마행 받다 내고 요 때까지 또 요거는 그대로 배를 라포도 세면은 공되나 센터 홀고 안 센터 가가 좋다고 정말 빼나 다다 이는 걸로 가 이열고는 semsalo shondro re ti mi ba ji che mi ma ro ko ne ti sem ne ta tabla de sem ti chi nang cha ta ne na ti ka lo ti ji sem ti ba da de bo ne ti sem de ba ta no sem de sem to se chukang ja wo re ta la ko da ko lo che bo ta ji de ta ha ko no so de ti so sa je ta ji tok de ko lo tem da ji ko lo che bo te re de ko ba ka lo te no sem ti chi ne ko 이제 막 거와대요. 담보가래 걸 니바 드리드바 이 요거들이 먹고 버서부터 대체 거와가 실제로 내서 대체를 이제부터 뒤집어 드리다가 콜로 보면은 드리체를 다다 이게 되나 기분 발 보면은 되니 다음에 좀 시간을 담들들이 드리다를 막고 디타를 오만을 배명하는 것들이 많이 배명하는 게 바로도 선발하고 있는 뭐 주성적 사지의 탐색들이 정보적도 들어가더니 많은 들어가야 돼. 그래서 잡죠 조항 돌지장은 많은 상제에서 책정 선거를 밀리 많은 상제에 많은 정신이서나 사제 다 따라가는 것을 도와를 두고 말이지. 됐다고 하고는 들다 라탑제 적도 참고요. 라탑제 두개 지모로 참고요. 나탑제 이게 동거로 참고요. 때려 싸움한테 봐지. 싸워 잘라 탐지 실론도 즉 당시 성소고요리 들이 습이 나와나 바다도 노바나 바다도 연배 들이 강나 강들 때라 때도 들이 라시와 초 마살만이와 망보다 자유 주고 예지 정다 주포 예지도 자사속 설문도 좀 자심대식 매바 돈당거든 봐 많이 봐 내게 들이 초로 들고도 사속들이 재미있게 뭐야 들이 sem초라 마초로들이 습대게 내들이 사지 주와요 때려서 습기 주정을 때려 뒤찍을 때리 당시 상태 뒤정을 감성감을 수업시는 데서치 피우 치기 선택이 남동을 전에 대해서 뭐요 이름은 내가 답라들이 좀 답나만 나도서 뭐요 돈담도 대표 토는데 봐 대만에 들고서 사족스고 저 토들라서 봐 놀라 같이 초로 사바다 니지가는 좀 좋고 요래 들이 때문에 들이 집대를 내서 사바지지 고요만 몇번 몇번이 되지 대다 때 좋대 막 내맥대
So now we are on page 18, in kind of in the middle. Meditate on the purity of non-dual union. So that is this non-dual union, which we have just mentioned, the outer, inner, and secret aspect to the Yab and Yum. And so the non-dual union is that ultimately the Yab and the Yum are not separate. Clarity is unified with emptiness, and there is an experience of great bliss. So then if you always abide within the state of empty clarity, or clarity and emptiness, so from within that state, and you visualize in my heart center as a moon disk and so forth. So you need to abide within this state of clarity and emptiness single-pointedly. And then from within that state, you visualize the mantra, and the mantra seed syllable and the mantra garland. An outer example of the mantra garland, so at the end of page 18 it says visualize the 6-syllable mantra circling on the edge. So that's the mantra garland. An outer example, a representation of the mantra garland is, for example, the prayer wheel. If you always slowly spin a prayer wheel, the mind also reaches a state of non-distraction. And as the wheel turns, or as the garland turns, the mind goes along with the rotation. The mind is not somewhere separate, but it goes along with the rotation. And that is why it is a method for the mind to abide single-pointedly. When you spin the prayer wheel or you visualize the mantra garlands, then the mind will not be distracted elsewhere. So it is a method to abide single-pointedly in the mind generation of bodhicitta. And that is then what purifies obscurations. You can therefore also see the wheel or the garland as like a washing machine for the mind that washes the mind as it keeps turning. So understand it in this way. And when you then are in that state of this unobjectified, single-pointed state, your mind dissolves with the mind of all the Buddhas of the 3 times. So whenever you turn the wheel or you visualize the mantra garland, it's important that the mind abides single-pointedly. So when you visualize the mantra garland, first you visualize the garland around the seed syllable, and then you slowly begin to turn the mantra garland. That is called the stage of approach, the approach stage. And then the mantra garland that spins slowly begins to accelerate, and it begins to turn very fast to the point where you can no longer visually perceive it, you can no longer see it. And so then in this way you move through approach and accomplishment, and then after accomplishment you reach the stage of performing activities. So basically the visualization is very straightforward in the text. You visualize in this way. And so it says, in my heart center is a moon disk upon which is a red shining Shri syllable surrounded by the 6-syllable mantra. The 6-syllable mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, the 6 syllables are the essence of the 6 paramitas, the antidotes to the 6 realms of samsara. And also it is said that the mantras of all the Buddhas of the 3 times are included within the 6-syllable Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, which is also why Garchen Rinpoche, who really is Vajradhara, had always said the Mani mantra is the Buddha. The Mani is the Buddha. He didn't really say much else, really. But what he said is really true. The Mani really is the Buddha. So the essence of the 6 syllables are the 6 paramitas, the antidote to the 6 realms of samsara. All the deities, it is said, are in essence the great compassionate one, Chenrezig, and all the mantras are included within the 6-syllable Mani mantra. That is why the deity is also called the gatherer, the gathering of the great secret. Within the expanse of primordial wisdom, all the Buddhas are one. There is a variety of deities appearing in myriads of forms, and that is because there are myriads of sentient beings with different dispositions and aspirations. And these Buddhas all appear according to the needs of sentient beings. Now, some have a preference for peaceful deities, some for wrathful deities, some prefer to practice the old Tantra, some the new Tantras. There are 84,000 different sentiments, and therefore there are 84,000 different teachings. But it is said that the 84,000 teachings all have their essence within bodhicitta. So in any case, when you practice visualizing the mantra, Garland, stay single-pointedly without distraction, and that is sufficient. If the mind proliferates, if thoughts proliferate in the mind, you can come back again to the relative bodhicitta of cultivating the 4 immeasurables. But if there's no proliferation in the mind, if there are no thoughts arising, it is sufficient to abide single-pointedly. If you abide single-pointedly, then that itself becomes the offering to all the Buddhas, and that itself purifies all the obscurations of sentient beings. And making offerings and purifying obscurations occur simultaneously. As we have said before, it is a greater benefit to spend a session in meditation than to liberate the lives of all sentient beings in the 3 realms of samsara. So the visualization is a method for the mind to abide without thoughts. And that is really the essence of all the various sadhanas. There are many different sadhanas with different visualizations, but they all are methods. These visualizations are methods for the mind to abide single-pointedly in the ultimate truth. And if it doesn't abide, you come back to the relative bodhicitta, or visualizing how light rays shine forth and then gather back, keeping in mind that those light rays shining forth are the rays of love and compassion. But if the mind really abides single-pointedly, then there is no need for any visualization. Then you can just remain within an unobjectified state as you recite the mantra.
당물이 성진 답제동 상계열에 되게 답책에 또마타도 답제 나그 세미제 상계열마 대하고를 되게들이 냠는 요래서 세 시스마다 랑 대식 용문인지가 요래 대시에 그 요래 들이 나 비용도 다리가 공시에 처리 들이 어떤 돈이 들어가는
Yeah, and then so it says, think that by the blessings of the body, speech, and mind, the empowerment of the 5 wisdoms are conferred. Understand? Yeah, and so, and in the end, there's the mantra, Vajra Samaza, which is before that actually. So the meaning of that is that when the Buddhas, when Chenrezig or the Buddhas have attained enlightenment, they have attained enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. And they have realized that their own mind is the Buddha. So in this is the nature of these intrinsic wisdom beings who are then absorbed into you. So the intrinsic wisdom deities are absorbed into me. So what this is saying, the meaning of this is that here you should recognize that the so-called wisdom deity is actually connected to my own Buddha nature inherently. And so then next comes the mantra recitation, and regarding that I've already explained to you the benefits of the mantra.
맨다 참아야 자스만디 니 강하는 요네디 하장 같이 뭐니 그 소소 대식 뭐되다 답색적 과대니 샤타나지 예미시 그요리 차롱게 차발을 쏘았다고 배치했다지 그래서 쏘아 될라면 되라나리면도 샤게 색도면서 고사 뭐 되게 대통 고마이 그래서 대통마 또로또 그러더니 샤타리 모리사 그니 얘는 다다 예미 동지教授왜 대기치 모리 공당
So it says in Vajra Samadza, and so this is a mantra that we encounter in various sadhanas, and the meaning of it is also very important. And so in essence, the meaning is that you recognize that my own Buddha nature is connected to the wisdom deity. The deity and my own mind are inseparable. So ice is actually water, and still ice is supplicating to water temporarily for the time being. But so here you should have no doubts in your mind as to whether or not the deity actually sees you or hears you, knows about you. There's no need to doubt about that. And so we often develop doubts or misunderstandings or a partial understanding or a completely wrong understanding. And due to these misunderstandings, misconceptions, we believe that the deity is somewhere far away. And so again, remember this important verse that we mentioned before. From the beginning, you and I are one and the same. So I'm sorry for having left.
그것도 도서 신랍되더라. 다들 люди 마인서 되면 차는 거래. 오, люди 뒤에 타풍좀 받아봐래. люди 문에 말에 기보자는 거래. люди 자송다고 살거든. 자송다고 차는 거지. 말하는 좀 마음에 봐. 오, 다동수 니다 문이 가르쳐라. 다들 그저기 베르죠. 참 왜 그치마 코로나가 말이. 저 장내 또 배지는 가용 말이. 또배 가발면 저저 배배면 가면 저 대들 다른 집안이야 잘 따르더니 대다오는 륜난동 아착동지 대들에 거에서 남는 난동 송도들은 작동 그리 대가를 선접하면 이 작동들이 그래서 구동통에서 나도 데이터 설명 차나 나는 대박하는 설명 차나 그때 구동통에서 나버리지 값들이 이 시간에 왕거들 값들이 줄이면 몽동아 가래 샤우나 이 시간은 저러고 요리 세당 작동도 이 시간을 저러 세당 작동 도차 대동 따대동 맞을냐만 이 시간을 저러고 그래 내가 가면 가래지는 제속속을 그러면 제가 너만매마 동네에서 자통자지 차로 그래 때려들이자 구동속에서 이 시간에 왕거지 이 시간에 되다 왕거지는 또 다시 당나오나 랑랑 하고 시는 간세부터 다시 시다 왕주고 대저부터 그래야지 왕거지는 나랑 왕 탑성네 나시 당나는 너밤에도 차는 너밤에 남도래지 쳐달라고 시작하고 이제 동사지 못해 강리성 거리들 코르도 때지 매번 유는 뭐 같이 겁나 그래서 뭐 차트만서 다르듯이 샘당만 다장 차온 거리 샘당만 다장 차오는더니 다 쳐달라는 게들이 용마요 말이 용마도 문제리 문이 말이 돼 문이 직자 요말 문이 많이 직자 요말이 요미가 탈도 들어보면 다 와서 이렇게는 보자고 딱 와서 그거리 대다고 하고는 너는 세는 저밤이나 세는 저밤에는 들이 셉싸워 저기 저밤들이 들수 봐자고 요리 대련 저를 때려 박차요 박차장이 뒤 박차들이 시설만 박차들 커는 돈은 들이 박차 독들을 좋아하는 독차를 박차 간에 통나더니 해당 시절에 들이 이냐고 박차 딱 걸린 거리 다도 체질은 탑중 총총 딱 걸린 거리 이 박차되고 세면점한테 연거리 이 박차 탑재 다 좋아라 들이 많은 걸로 딱 봐도 다다 세면 박차하면 요즘 기체 보여래 다다 별을 같이 하면 이 신고랑 상계리 들이 이 시간에 왕거리 들이 나쁘시 강한 사마 내 차로 요래 돼 들이 꿀장 톡지 제보죠 사마지리들 포신제 지담제 지리들이 몽유제 지담제 제대로 말해 대로 은혜래 대쪽으로 요리지 은혜래 오 포신제 샘도 저 세속도 말해
So then it says, think that the blessings of the body, speech, and mind, that by the blessings of the body, speech, and mind, the empowerments of the 5 wisdoms are conferred. So the body, speech, and mind. So no, we think that I am this, I am my body, and actually the body lacks any true existence. The body is just like a heap of dust that will turn into nothing, and the body is not real. I will exchange this body, and the mind, the form of the deity, the Sambhogakaya, continues to remain like a rainbow in the sky. And in this way, by visualizing the deity, the rainbow-like form of the deity, you purify the obscurations of the body. And then regarding speech, so through the mantra, you purify the obscurations of speech. Then you purify the obscuration of speech by no longer grasping at whatever sounds you hear. And we hear all kinds of sounds. People say pleasant things, people say unpleasant things. If someone insults you and says something very unpleasant to you, if you don't grasp at that, you would just think that, oh, this is just momentary. And it doesn't really exist, actually. So even if somebody humiliates you or insults you, if you don't grasp at these words, then you would not get angry at them. And likewise, you would not feel overjoyed when somebody praises you. So you would not be overjoyed when somebody praises you, and you would not be upset when someone humiliates you. That is a sign of not grasping at sounds. Then, when there's no grasping in your mind, all appearances are seen as empty. all sounds are empty sounds. And in this way, you receive the blessings of body and speech. So the blessings of body and speech are absorbed when there is no grasping at either forms or sounds within your mind. And then regarding the blessings of the mind, it is when the mind abides continuously within a state of clarity, a clear, empty mind. So this is how we receive those blessings of body, speech, and mind. So these blessings arise when we actually remain within a single-pointed state of practice. And then at that moment, abiding within that state, the empowerments of the 5 wisdoms are conferred. So what that means is that when the 5 afflictive emotions arise, they are transformed into the 5 wisdoms. For example, anger is recognized as empty clarity, or desire becomes empty bliss, or pride becomes the equanimity wisdom, and so forth. So regardless of what arises, nothing affects you negatively in any way. Anything may arise at all. People may say whatever they please, whatever they want to say, whatever happens, nothing affects you negatively. There is no grasping. You abide in the rainbow-like form of the deity. So that is to receive the empowerment of the 5 wisdoms, when the 5 afflictive emotions are rendered powerless. For example, when anger arises, you sustain awareness, and the anger can't do anything. It can't harm you or affect you in any way. You have attained complete autonomy, a freedom of mind. Nothing affects me. Anger doesn't affect me. Desire doesn't affect me. No matter which thought arises, it subsides just like a wave in water. And nothing at all remains within the mind. Nothing affects my mind. And so that is the result of having practiced abiding single-pointedly with the mantra garland. So as you meditate on the mantra garland single-pointedly, gradually, all the stains of habitual patterns in your mind become purified. And the mind becomes completely clear, like clear water that is undisturbed by any mud. So that the muddiness of the water, the muddiness of the mind is our dualistic thinking. It is to think either something is real or something is not real. And in reality, it's neither. It's neither real nor not real. Chen Rinpoche had always spoken about that is the middle way view. When there is no grasping at anything whatsoever, then you transcend existence and non-existence, and the mind abides in complete clarity. The moment grasping, fixation arises in the mind will again become confused. And when confusion or delusion arises within the mind, you are again placing habitual tendencies or imprints into the mind. And then when you die, you will bring these imprints, these habitual tendencies with you. And then the 6 kinds of habitual tendencies lead to birth in the 6 realms of samsara, depending on which tendency is the strongest. For example, if hatred or anger is predominant, then you will always experience the suffering of the hell realms. Or if jealousy is predominant, you will always find yourself fighting and struggling. So when you, however, purify these habitual imprints, these karmic tendencies, then the mind becomes completely pure. And a method to purify these habitual tendencies is to meditate on the mantra garland of the Mani wheel. And then no further imprint is placed into your mind. So it's very important to not create further habitual karmic tendencies within the mind, and to recognize that the mind itself is the Buddha. So this is the attaining of the empowerment of the of the 5 wisdoms, and then where is it? And then on page 20, it says and transforms them all into Avalokiteshvara. So that means that you recognize that all those males in this world with compassion are Chenrezig, and all females with compassion are Tara. And you have complete certainty in that. You fully trust in that. And because what really makes the deity Chenrezig or Tara is mainly the mind. The mind is more important than the body.
나타지 사바저들이 만나는 로드제들이 단지 투지지 보죠. 로드제 집안들이 다다단 남별링나 가사카라 투지지 부고는 만나는 두거리요래 다른 산이 가는 나물이 라랑 소설 만나는 요나 제 철분 만나 록들이 들어서 왔다 됐다 잡 이렇게 길에서 주대 걸면 들어서 합쳐를 줘래 조들이 길에서 삼형제들 들어서 jogu요래 용도지 다다 좋아 jogu요래 배는 그렇게 되면 통절 어디지 사지 좀 내지서는 통절 지저지는 레짐들이 다 르조르 세마 르조르는 미셔스를 걸다 세마 르조요래 듣고 초조요래 막전 통절 때 좋아 jogu거니 이렇게 저 탑재로 되는 가연 시간 말 고설하더니 카라고 왔다 저 소왔다 비를 듣고 초절 때라 저거 좋아 띠리 용조르지 통절들이 랑들이 놀라 단지지 총전으로 삼형제 때에서 체를 줘 들으라고 대식지 못해 차로서 때에서 쉬었고 요래 세조 와도에 남기지 배는 레점리 내록도 없이 봐 탐지들이 세조 와도들이 통조 용조 따조 세마를 좀 받은 통조 누구 초조를 되들이 다 뿌리나 들도 초조를 이렇게 좀 뭐요래 강해 되는 이제리 말어와래 이제리 포카지 줄아나는데 이제리 처럼 자동을 이제리 상제리 내려들이 내가 기 로리 처럼 자동을 들때 사숙세로 차오게 거네들이 대다대 좋다면 대대 좋다들이 상제가 송마에 그래서 만나면 랑 접나 오 만나면 다 두근도 없어 그러니까 그것도 만나면 다 로드자제단 저거 요리 남년 생매 받고 다 다양한 저거 요리 이때 만나면 정말 보고 요리 듣기 기보 요리 듣기는 사직기 폭발진에 그 삼형제들 요리 상들이 형제 싫은 저거를 해서 사고 그래 너 접려고 요리 우리가 이때는 차성 다시 들리
Then there is this other short text, which is the a consecration practice of blessing the mani pills, which happens in connection with Mani Drupchen, and it is practiced all over the world. For example, in Dharamsala and so forth, in different places. Mani practices are engaged in to consecrate those mani pills. So these are the mani pills that you received, that you're eating. And so when you eat these mani pills, think that they are imbued with the blessings of Chenrezig's great love and compassion, and therefore by your eating the pills, your own love and compassion will increase. The eating of the mani pills is called a liberation by tasting. There's different kinds of liberation. There's 6 kinds of liberation, and one of them is the liberation by tasting. There's also liberation by seeing, like the liberation by seeing mantras. There's liberation by hearing. For example, when we hear about the workings of karma, cause and effect. There's liberation by touch, and that is touch by sand. There's this sand that touches those who have passed away, and then they become liberated. So there is the liberation of smell, sense, like incense and so forth. And so these are all all forms of liberation that benefit beings who don't understand the meaning of it. For example, an animal who doesn't understand the meaning of it, by just having like liberation by taste or touch and so forth placed close to them, or kind of connecting them to that, the seed of liberation is planted within them. And for example, by eating the mani pills, the liberation by tasting, self-grasping diminishes, and love and compassion increase. And that happens by virtue of Buddha nature, because beings possess Buddha nature. That is why when they encounter the sun or the heat of liberation, then their ice block can become somewhat melted. And so that's on the outer level. On the inner level, sentient beings have not realized the nature of their mind, the nature of karma, cause and effect, and they need to rely on certain kinds of liberations, like liberation by seeing and liberation by touching, and liberation through this like sand grains upon death, and liberation by hearing, and liberation by through scents or fragrances and so on. And by coming into contact with the different kinds of liberation, the seed of liberation is planted, and beings will become gradually liberated. Their aggregates, sense sources, and elements are primordially Buddha, and only temporarily in an ice block-like state due to a temporary condition, but that's not their true nature. When they encounter the heat of love, the love of the Buddhas, and so in this way, the liberation, various methods of liberation by the Buddha that he granted with great love, then gradually those sentient beings can become liberated. And so these mani pills have been consecrated through the Chenrezig practice. At Gar Monastery, we have engaged in this practice continuously since 700-800 years already. The Chenrezig practice is practiced day and night at Gar Monastery. Even right now, it is still being practiced. And the mani pills that we are eating now have been consecrated through the mani drupcha, the mani practice that is ongoing at Gar Monastery. So that is also very important, that you take these mani pills, that you understand that the pills are endowed with the blessings of Chenrezig's great love and compassion, and when I'm eating these pills, my own compassion increases. And so in this way, it would be excellent to practice, or to also practice the consecration of the mani pills, which is this separate handout here. If you recite that and then consecrate the mani pills and then eat the mani pills. So in any case, this concludes my teachings in Dashidelek.
Dankeschön, Siva, Teichu, Kamma, Ivan Sangha Teichu, Longai.
Rinpoche, thank you so much. Thank you
谢谢
for teaching. Rinpoche, long life,
谢谢
健康长寿。We are very appreciate GBI help us for this later Chenrezig teaching. It was wonderful, very profound teaching. Also, we like to thank all the translators for different languages. So also thanks all the volunteers, especially thanks our very precious Guru, Garchen Rinpoche. Rinpoche 常住啊，常住。
Dankeschön, 谢谢你们，谢谢，龙龙，哟。
谢谢仁波切，
有
健康长寿。 辛苦了，仁波切。
Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.